Welcome to Coaching in Session,
where limits end and growth begins.
Hosted by Michael Rearden.
This is your space to challenge the ordinary,
unlock your potential,
and step boldly into your next chapter.
Your mindset journey continues.
A couple of weeks back, I had an episode of the podcast that talked about a plan for the future, a plan in the making, a plan from the universe, a plan possibly from God, where this plan wasn't so much of something that was set in stone, but an idea of what was possible. I think of it very similar to how a person is going to conceptualize what type of home they want. They might say, I want a kitchen that's an open space living kitchen. I want 5 bedrooms that's easy to understand. And I want a living space that is going to be inviting. So like when we are ambiguous with the concepts to a space, like an open concept living space, where it's the living room and the kitchen, they're open, there's no walls dividing it. It could be easy to just see the kitchen and the living room together. But what we don't realize is that there has to be some type of dividers, where there be the kitchen island, a bar top, a sofa. All of those things are going to be done via the artwork, right? Whoever is designing it, the architect. But what happens is we might be ambiguous to something, and we're just looking for the answer. We're looking for an understanding. We're looking for some help. I remember when I was first starting the business, and one of the holdups for the business was the logo. It sounds crazy, right? I had all the paperwork in, and I was waiting for my graphic designer to do the logo. And he worked for a very big company, where it was challenging for me to get him to do the work because he was giving me the friend discount. And then, of course, he was busy. And then he's the type of person himself that if he gets overwhelmed or burdened, he just kind of fizzes out. Well, I had to basically just kind of be there saying, hey, I'm here for you. Eventually, I was able to get the logo. I got the first edition. It looked very cool. I gave them some ideas, some feedback after speaking to some other graphic designers, and they basically helped me with the logo of what you see today, where it's the bird in the mountains. And it's a very good logo, and everyone always loves that logo. When they see the logo, they go, oh, it's a very good logo. Especially people who work with graphic designs or people who work with embroidery or whatever it is, because they see the logo and they say, wow, there's a lot of detail in here. It's not just something that ChatGPT can create for you. Well, I had this idea of what I wanted, and I gave him, this idea also. And he basically took what I said and tried to make it reality. And it's funny because the first one he did was exactly what I wanted. But I said, this is not it. And sure enough, he basically took over. He gave me some questions and I answered the questions. He's like, what are some things that you want to see? Like, what do you want it to represent? And I had told him what I wanted, like wisdom, journey, etc. And he was able to come up with the bird and the mountains flying. And I was like, this is it. Where it was way more than what I thought. I was thinking like a little owl with like a graduation cap with like a graduation scroll. That's what I was thinking the logo is. And I was thinking like that wouldn't represent Reven concepts quite well. Yeah, sure. It is going to represent maybe a moment in our life, a moment where we can graduate and move on to the next chapter. But Reven concepts was something more. It was a journey, because what we are right now might not be what we are later. And it's not to say that we're going to be better, because we could be worse if we're doing the wrong things. Now, I say all this to say that sometimes in life, we can have an idea for something. We can have a plan for something, as I talked about 2 weeks ago. What happens is sometimes we get so busy doing so many different things that we forget to listen. We forget to listen to what we truly want. Because as I told my graphic designer friend, I said, hey, this is what I want. And even though I was able to give him the idea of what I wanted, as I could a builder saying, hey, this is what I want for my home, they might come up with something that I would have never imagined myself. Of course, there could be some trial and error where you try things out and you say that this is not good. I don't like this. But what tends to happen is most people, they don't even get to that point of saying what they want. or listening to what they even truly want and desire. Because if you think about it, if you said that I want a better life for myself and you started listening to yourself, do you think that you will keep on doing the things that you've been doing? Scrolling on your phone, wasting time, procrastinating, not making calls, whatever it be. Are you not moving forward? Now, of course, there could be reasons for the different things that you could be doing. Maybe there's not enough time in your day. Maybe your schedule doesn't allow for it. Maybe you have a lot of moving pieces, and one of the things that you don't want to do is start moving. And then once you get that momentum, it's impossible to stop. But then again, your livelihood or your lifestyle at the moment might not make it feasible. Think of it this way. Maybe you are a business owner and you have a lot of obligations with family members. So it could be wife, kids, mom, dad, grandparents, whatever it be. And you just can't get away from any of which responsibility, meaning you can't get away from your business. You can't get away from the family. There are going to be people who need you. Well, if you need yourself, something has to give. And one of my favorite, guys that have been on the podcast, Michael T. Brown, he told me even after the episode, this is not something you can listen to because this was a conversation him and I had offline. And he basically says that people are going to be in different seasons of their life, where sometimes you could be in a season of growth and prosperity. And sometimes you're just in a season of staying stuck, coasting, or just waiting. Now, ideally, mindset, we don't want to be in that season of just waiting for too long. We want to have some plan, some dedication, some motivation to build the momentum or create disciplines that are going to help us move forward. We want that for mindset. But sometimes mindset can be, let me pay attention to how I'm feeling. Let me pay attention to myself. Am I listening to my body? Am I listening to my mind? What do I need right now? Because maybe you need some beach time. Maybe you need a pina colada. Maybe you need a shot of tequila. Who knows better than you if you do the work? Now, all of this was kind of an idea that came to me when I started to think of a podcast topic very similar to how we talked about higher being, God, deity, when we talked about God's plan, this idea of that there's a future for us. And we have to ask ourselves, well, if there's a future for us, why are we not chasing it? Why are we not choosing to live it? There's this idea that sometimes we forget to listen to the plan. We forget to listen to ourselves. And even in my own life, I experienced this. I said, well, when I was younger, I would go to Catholic school and I would go to church every single Sunday. I go to church every Sunday, but there was more to it than just showing up. There was a studying aspect to it. It was a learning process to it. It was a looking up process and asking for help growing up because we didn't have the easiest life growing up. There was a lot of challenges that my family had to go through in order for us to survive or for us to even make it out somewhat unscathed and to have some semblance of a good childhood. Well, we survived, we made it, and all of the kids well, not all of them, but most of the grandkids that came out did a really good job. And this is not to poke fun at anybody who didn't make it. This is just to help with an understanding of how sometimes we can get lost if we stop paying attention. I remember when I was young, I would be able to, pray and I would get feelings and I would see things and I was like, wow, I would see the possibilities, right, of what I was believing in. And at some point you get so bogged down, and I'm sure I'm not alone here, where people get so bogged down in their family and their businesses and life in general, where you stop to pay attention to something that you have been thinking about or you were able to do before. And then you start to reflect on when was the last time I truly prayed or I had a conversation with somebody more than just a contractual agreement or a pass and go. Hey, how you doing? I'm doing good. All right. See you later. Thanks for coming. It's very quick in our world today because we live in a very fast-paced world. We live in a fast-paced society. You have to ask yourself, if someone is truly trying to speak with you, I think of all my clients that I'm working with. I'm talking to them and I'm not just rushing them. All right, come on. The clock is ticking. The clock is ticking. Let's go. Hurry up and tell me what you want. It's listening. It's being patient. It's understanding. And I think about how if one person were to pray for that, for a person to wish or to understand or to even listen to them or to give them some guidance, can they even hear the guidance when it comes their way? Because if someone tells you some bad news, you might say, I don't want to hear that. Okay. I have a good thing going. I don't want to worry about all the ins and outs and all the problems. You can deal with that. I have other things on my agenda, and problems are not going to be one of them today. I see it so often today where people will forego the problem, forego the learning lesson, and just hope for the best. Well, what happens when a car doesn't have oil is that it eventually breaks down. And what happens when we don't give attention and pay attention and start listening to the things that matter in our life? We're going to start to break down. This idea, and it's going to be very similar to the blog episode that just came out recently, with this idea of overload in our mind and our fatigue. This is going to be something we need to be paying attention to. But this is going to be the second aspect to that blog, because spirituality has some to do with mindset. But when it comes to it, it's going to be individualized to belief, because what I can say to you might not ring true because you have a different idea of what faith is for you, what religion is for you, and or what type of guidance you want to see given to you. Because there's going to be two types of people in this world when it comes to advice, for structuring, for support. Some people, they need to get told everything and they need to get feedback, whether positive or negative. And then there's going to be people who can just get the assignment and they just knock it out of the park. And of course, there could be some feedback after it's done, of course, for progress, but it's not going to be, hey, I need you to hold my hand. Some people can just go run and then they check in and we're cool. And other times you need to baby somebody. Hey, let's do this step by step. It's like my daughter. She's a mess where she refuses to walk even though she can walk. My son, on the other hand, walked, and he shouldn't have been walking, right? He had both feet or legs or whatever. And I remember early on, it's just like he's doing that in order for him to walk at such a young age. And my daughter, she has very straight legs. And I just think about how she could run if she wanted to, but she chooses to crawl and stand up here and there and to do little steps and things like that. And maybe in life, there's this idea that you can take things baby steps and step by step process and go slow. Or there can be, hey, even if I'm not ready, I'm going to do it. And this is not so much to talk about their mindsets. This is to talk about how even through actions, we can listen. Because I can show you something and someone else can show you something else. You put it together and you have the answer. I'm not saying I have all the answers for everybody at every given time. What I can give you is, if you give me what's going on, I can give you some insight. And then, of course, you can do the investigative work and begin the process to either fix it or to get rid of it. Not everything you need to fix. I think people think life is a fixer-upper project where everything has to be perfect. No, it doesn't. Okay. If you ever rake leaves or something, there might be a leaf left. Of course, you can be that person to say, oh, so meticulous, but there's going to be something that can be adjusted. Think of it as a chef or something, or a hairstylist, right? Even after they're done with the initial run through the project, the haircut, whatever it is, the food prep, they look at what they have created or what they have done, and they move something here and there to kind of put the icing on the cake. That icing right there was so many different things to that point. And I think people think we just want to get to the icing process, but there's so much more that happens from the start to the final product, where we're making sure that everything is in the right alignment. There's enough frosting. there's the right garnish, everything looks presentable, right? And we know that sometimes we eat with our eyes, and I say eat, I'm not talking about even physically eat food, like consume food. Sometimes it can be people where we look at somebody and we say, wow, like that person is so amazing. Where we look at our images that we see and we say, okay, this is, what I should be going for. And this happens quite a lot in life, where we start to look up now and we ask, why are we having all of these challenges? Why are we having all of these troubles? And why are we dealing with all of this heartache? Because we can look at this idea of we should be living in accordance to a good life, right? Especially if you're a believer and that God or, Jesus died, and that when he died, all of our sins were forgiven. Then you have to ask our, that $1 million question. Well, if our sins were forgiven, then why are we having a hard life? Well, sins and hard life are not associated with one and one, right? The morality aspect is going to be different. I find it interesting how sometimes in life when things are good, we don't ask for help. Well, most people don't come to me and say, hey, Michael, everything is good in my life. I just want to let you know that everything is good. And I don't need you, but I just wanted to let you know everything's good. Okay. Most people don't do that, right? Most people say, hey, I have this problem. I have this problem. I have this problem. And then we start to work on those problems, right? Until they don't have any more problems. The issue is that sometimes we will look at the people who have helped us or the people who should be giving us help. And we might ask, well, why are they not helping me anymore? Well, did you ask for help? People don't magically know that you need help. Of course, there's going to be people sometimes that they might say, I'm going to bless you, right? And this is a server, trying to figure out how they're going to make ends meet to pay their rent for the night. Well, certain people can, be that blessing for them. But the reality is when we go silent, we have a hard time listening because we get distracted. We get distracted by all of the things, all our worries, all of our problems. And we ask, why God, why me? Well, it's not so much about why you, right? There's a saying that, God doesn't give you anything that you can't handle. And you can use any type of term you want for God or deity or universe. The universe doesn't give you anything that you can't handle, right? Like, it doesn't matter the terminologies you use. But what I will say is that a lot of people, they get distracted and they don't realize their full potential. Think of it this way. There's a lot of sayings to this, where there's a story of an elephant when they were a baby and they had a small rope that would be able to keep them where they are. And sure enough, the baby tried and tried and tried to get away from their encampment, right, their captivity. And they couldn't, because that small rope was sufficient enough at the time that elephant was a baby. Well, fast forward, and this elephant is a huge elephant. It's an adult elephant. It's not a child elephant. But that same small, feeble rope that can keep that baby elephant there can not keep that big elephant there, but the big elephant sees that as a shackle. Oh, I tried before and I can't do it again. All right. Well, this is what is happening right now. Most people, they have tried something, but it didn't work. It didn't work out quite well. You can't keep looking up and wonder why you're tripping on all of the roots from the trees when you're walking in the forest. One of the things I realized early on when I did a lot of hiking, as much as you want to look forward and to look up at the trees and to look at the nature, there is an aspect to understanding what's on the path, whether there be snakes or whether there be an animal or there be a bear down the road or there be a tree root right there in the middle of your walkway trying to trip you and make you fall. All of this is life. All of this is going to be the problems that we can be facing. Well, I know that sometimes in certain seasons of our life, we can go silent. We can say, you know what? I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to do the work. And sure enough, you do the work, right? But then later on, you start to have more problems again. Why am I having more problems? I did the work, right, Michael? I did the work. What's happening? Well, the work that you have done is not going to bring you through into the rest of your life. There's always going to be a moment when you have to put in an immense amount of work. Now, this is not to say that you can't do a lot of work in your 20s and your 30s, sell the companies that you have built for billions of dollars, and you need to go through that suffering again, right? This is not to say that you have to suffer every single given time. What I'm saying is that you or your brain, or just as humans are, we need problems. We need to understand that there's going to be something we need to be looking at, and we need to give it some level of attention, right? That's that purpose aspect. Because the moment we don't have purpose or a drive or an ambition or direction, that's when things start to fall apart. That's when things start to break. It can happen to a child as young as a newborn, and it can happen to an elderly person who's already retired, waiting for a call from their grandkids, waiting for good news from their friend, or waiting for the next book club meeting next week and they just got out of it. Sometimes when we're left alone and everything is silent, maybe that's the moment when we have the best shot at hearing once more, hearing the plan for our future. This can't be it. Listening to ourselves, our emotions, right? Can we go more? Can we do more? As much as I would love to say to people, hey, you can be anything you want. Yeah, sure, that's 100% true. But will you do everything in order to get that? In order to get that anything? Most people won't. Most people go silent when it's time to call in, when it's time to check in, when it's time to clock in, when it's time to get to work, when it's time to get dirty, when it's time to struggle, when it's time to challenge, when it's time to back up after you have fallen. Most people don't want that moment. Most people, they just want the good. So they'll blindly start to speak. They'll blindly start to pray. Their prayers have no indication of action. Praying can be very similar to hope, where I hope things will go my way. I hope I win the lotto. I pray I win the lotto, but there's no directive there. What do we need to do? Most people just have to stop getting distracted. Most people just have to say, this is what I want, and I'm going to work until I get it. Not until I don't feel like working anymore. Not until I feel as if I got to a point in life where this is just okay. This is enough. Because what is enough? It's never enough. We won't have enough until we do the work with our mind. There's always going to be something else that we yearn for. But just because we yearn for it doesn't mean that we demand it. It doesn't mean we have to claim it, because it could just be an idea. Most people who are like rappers and, they get a lot of money in the beginning, sports players, they say, I'm going to go buy a private jet, and they buy a private jet, and then they realize, oh, that wasn't a good deal, right? They wanted it. They didn't want to deal with all the commercial flights and all the mayhems. And then sure enough, now they have new problems, right? You would think that owning a private jet is a nice problem to have, but the reality is it's not for everybody. So we have to do the work, and we have to go silent for a time perhaps and say, if I can go silent, what can I hear? Because when we're young, we can hear extremely well, even though we don't listen to our parents or our teachers. They say to stop doing it, and we keep doing it. What I'm saying is when we're young, we can see so much more because we don't have as many distractions. We don't have as many obstacles or stresses. Of course, we do have stresses. We do have obstacles. There's going to be things that we deal with as children, but children problems are not adult problems. So the responsibility is not going to be there quite yet. And I tell all the young people, and if you're living with your parents right now, keep on living with them. You don't need to go out, get an apartment to show everyone in the world that you can live on your own, right? Because we can just make it, or we can make it. We can flourish, right? And most people, they are such in a rush, or they're in a big hurry to live a lifestyle that they're not ready for, whether it be financially, mentally, spiritually. These things are going to stop you from hearing all of the things that are happening. Those things are going to stop you from paying attention to all the things that are going around or on in your life, because there's never nothing going on. We just get distracted. So maybe right now is we're looking up and we're hoping and we're praying and we feel as if God went silent on us. But the reality is we went silent on ourselves. We keep on speaking, but we don't do any of the listening. We don't do any of the hearing, because most people can hear God, but do they listen to him? Most people can hear good advice, but do they listen to it? Most people can hear a good thing, but do they allow that good thing to permeate within them? Do they listen? Because anyone can say that the stove is hot, the fire is hot, you need to do this, you need to do that. Anyone can hear that. But if you're not listening, you're not going to go anywhere, because listening requires two parts: to conceptualize and then to initiate, to activate. That right there is going to be the key point. That's going to be the turning point for many of the people who are stuck right now. So this is for anyone who is stuck, anyone who feels as if they stopped hearing the goodness in their life, the good things that could come their way, the positivities, the blessings, whatever you want to consider them. This is an opportunity for you to take a step back and to hear once more. And then from that hearing, can you listen? Because anyone can have a problem with their car and they can hear it and they say, oh, let me turn up this car volume so I'm not hearing that problem anymore. But when you take it to a mechanic, the mechanic is going to say, oh, I hear it. I hear what's going on. And then once they start to diagnose the problem, they start listening. They listen to the car, the noise, right? The vibrations. They look at their thermometers and their machinery, their testing kits. All of those things, they're putting attention to what is the problem. Because right now you could have a problem. Right now, the problem might not be big. It might be just forming into something big. And maybe you might say, well, my problems are not that big. And maybe you might say, my problems are ginormous and I need to figure out what to do. Well, it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in right now. Easy or hard, or listening or hearing or taking action or not taking action. There's always going to be an alternative. Sometimes we have to say, I'm going to do what's best for me right now. And sometimes you're going to say, I'm going to do what's best for me in the future. I believe there's a balance there. Sometimes you're going to need the reprieve. You're going to need the ice cream. You're going to need the nap. And sometimes you're going to have to be hungry and you're going to have to dig in. So to be able to differentiate between that, you need to have a good, strong mindset. I encourage everyone, if they are looking for a stronger mindset, to head over to revenconcepts.com, get yourself a consultation, learn more about how you can listen in your life, how you can get to the point where you're not only just being an echo, or you're being like a tunnel, like a sound chamber or an echo chamber, where it's like you are just talking to yourself. Now at least you can be talking into existence. So bring the life that you want into existence. Bring the life that you desire or that you choose to live. All of these things are going to be conceptualized in the actions that you take and the thoughts that you bring forth in a given day. So do the work. You can hear it while you're listening.